making?
So many things. So many things. I'll talk to you about later. Hey guys, how are you? My name's Loni Lewis, and I'm the owner of Bar Black Club here in Savannah, Georgia. And I'm also a sustainability enthusiast, but you've already known that if you've been tuning into our Portland Cocktail Week classes. Today we have a very special guest joining us, Zoe Van der Grinten. I said it wrong.
No, you said it right. It was perfect.
Okay. She's the Northeast brand ambassador for Bombay Gin.
Yay.
And we're so excited to have her on today. So today we're going to be continuing our Earth Month programming with Zoe, and Zoe is going to give us the rundown of the production process at Bombay Gin and how they source the Murcian lemons for Bombay Sapphire Premier Cru. And I am also going to be sharing some resources at the end that I rely on doing R&D to get inspired to keep my cocktails eco-friendly. But first, we got to do those 4 things, and they are like us on Facebook, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, follow us on the Insta, and then also please comment below and ask a whole bunch of questions so that we spend all our time answering your questions and not actually presenting. All right, so Zoe actually has this fantastic presentation on Bombay. So we're going to let her get into the Bombay education part of the class, and take it away, Zoe.
Amazing. Thank you, Loni.
You're welcome.
I think actually before I even want to get started talking a bit more about gin, wanted to mention Most Imaginative Bartender because that's how Loni and I met. She was a finalist last year and did such an amazing job. And it was very, very lucky to be able to get to spend so much time with her. But we actually just wrapped on this year's. I know, it's crazy. It's already been a year too. But Most Imaginative Bartender is really focusing on bartenders' creative outlets outside of the bar and then how you create cocktails through that. So Loni focused on sustainability, which made so much sense. And our winner this year is Elise Hansen from Toronto. She is into gardening, and her project is helping to create rooftop gardens on rooftops of bars and restaurants across the city, which is super cool. But I guess we can get started on the slides. That's me. Hello.
Oh, hey.
So I just put my Instagram and my email on there. Please feel free if there's a question that comes up later after we're done. Feel free to send me a message. Feel free to send me an email. I am here for all your gin-related questions. I've been in the industry for 15 plus years. Always been an avid gin drinker. I'll actually put this back on because I know my email is long. But I've been an avid gin drinker, even when my friends were drinking flavored vodkas when we first started drinking. And a lot of the places that I've worked have been really focused on sustainability. From bars to pop-ups. I was lucky enough to be able to be a part of the Wasted pop-up with Dan Barber we did one in London as well as in New York. But very, very excited to get to chat a bit more about sustainability with you guys as well, but through gin. So this is kind of a big statement, right? On a mission to be the most sustainable global gin. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Before starting with Bombay, I didn't really actually know, and I don't know if you knew anything about it before, MIB, but the kind of sustainable efforts that we go through. And it's something that's, been happening for years and years, because I think very well that it's not just a quick fix, right? It's something that you have to work at and work towards. And we really want to be the gin brand that is leading the way for sustainability. Before we kind of get stuck into sustainability, I'll talk a little bit about kind of Gin 101 and some distillation, because that does actually fall in line. We'll talk, so our 2 main gin distillation types, you have steep and boil, and you have vapor distillation. So steep and boil, perfect example is Beefeater. It's a London dry gin, similar actual kind of botanical makeup to Bombay, but because of the extraction methods, it's going to taste entirely different. So this photo here is actually the Beefeater distillery. You can see there's quite a few stills that are on this side of the wall. The other side of the wall, they actually have the same amount of stills. This means with steep and boil, you're taking your grain neutral spirit, your GNS, you're putting it into the still, and then you're putting your botanicals in there. Steeping is when you're not turning on the still, you're not adding any heat yet, right? I think we all know from making syrups, if you do a cold, like room temp infusion versus you're heating up the syrup, you're going to get very different flavors and compounds coming through. So they basically have their stills just with the botanicals not heated on one side while the other side's running, so they can always be making gin. We, all Bombay gins are vapor distilled. So what this means is there's no actual direct contact with the botanicals to the GNS. So you have your still, you put your GNS into it, and instead of putting the botanicals directly in the GNS, we actually have a separate area where we layer all the botanicals. Loni, I know you saw at the distillery last year.
Cool.
It's a pretty crazy process.
Yeah.
And you saw the opening of the still. You were, yeah?
Yeah.
So it's crazy because the botanicals are in there, right? It's a lot of heat that's happening, but when it comes out, you can open it up right away and you can touch it. So they're layered in these big copper perforated baskets in a very specific order. If you change the order, you will change the gin. And as the alcohol vapors basically rise up, they're going to extract the flavor that way. It'll reach the condensing column, which is a long tube. It has a lot of cold water in tubes, essentially, through there. And it's going to cool it down, reaching 86% ABV. And then we add nothing but water for dilution. What does this mean in terms of flavor? So for our vapor distillation, we're kind of sitting in this like purple and green zone over here. So you can see there's floral, fruity, herbaceous, aromatic, where your steep and boil is going to be sitting more in that middle ground in the orange and yellow. So a bit more like woody, pine, which is often associated with juniper, oil, petrol. So a bit more of those kind of like heavier flavors coming through. It's not to say that either one is right. It's just whatever the master distiller and the team, whoever's gin it is deciding what those kind of flavor compounds that you want to be expressed, right? I think a great way to talk about it is talking through coffee, where you can start out with the same bean, you can start out with water, but the way that you're going to extract those flavors can create a completely different taste, completely different mouthfeel. So here our vapor distilled would be something like a pour over, where your steep and boil would be something more like an espresso. A really cool thing that kind of is a big reason for the vapor distillation. Yes, we want to kind of keep those flavors light and bright and fresh. But we're actually able to cut a lot of energy costs by using this method as well. So in order to heat our stills, we use a biomass boiler. These boilers are heated by locally and sustainably sourced wood chips. And just by doing that already, we're cutting the carbon's footprint by 25%, which is crazy. And then because of vapor distillation, we're also using heat recovery. So when I was talking about how the vapor distillation works, right, we have that condensing column. You have the cold water that are in the tubes that are in there. But obviously, if you have something hot coming in contact with something cold, it's going to reverse. You're still going to have the water, but it's going to be heated up already. Instead of throwing that water away, we actually keep that water and preheat the next batch of spirit for the gin that we're going to make. If anybody's ever, if you've watched any sort of pot boil, whether it's like for your pasta water, you know how long it takes. And these are 12,000 liter stills. So it obviously takes a long time, but cutting back on energy, cutting back on water usage too.
I actually really love that. Can you go back to that
Yeah,
other?
of course.
Yeah, I really love this because if you have somebody coming in and they're like, "Oh, I want more of a piney, gin," you can point them towards a steep and boil. But if they're looking for something that's like fruity and floral or aromatic, you can definitely be like, "Oh, well, you want like a vapor distilled gin like Bombay." I love that.
For sure. And then, I mean, there's a lot of gins that'll kind of do a combination of two as well, right? So you have a whole sort of mixture. Hendrix, for example, they do both steep and boil and vapor distilled, and then they blend it all together. So it is really just, yeah, depending, but it's a great thing to have. And I'm very happy to send this to you as well so you can have it.
Oh, okay. I love that. I love that graphic.
This slide is very busy. I know there's a lot of words going on. We're not going to read through all of it, but I mean, we'll touch on most of it throughout. Here, I think like focusing more on the light blue boxes. We were just talking about grain neutral spirit. So GNS. It's made, we use ours is wheat. So normally it'll be whatever the excess crop is within that area. We're based in Europe. Wheat is the excess crop. And we are getting that imported, but it is all sustainably sourced from France. The other one over here is the iconic blue glass in every bottle. It's not only 100% recyclable, but it is made of a third of recycled glass already. And then down here, oops, go back. Our distillery sends zero waste to landfill. All waste is recycled or converted into energy. I think this is crazy. I can't be zero waste in my own home.
Yeah.
I have definitely like made an effort at a lot of bars to be as close to zero waste as possible. I think the closest probably when I was working at White Lion, we had no perishables, we had no ice, we had no fresh citrus, we had nothing that would go off, but we still had waste, right? It's crazy. And a big thing here, I think, is the converted into energy. What does that mean? So those botanicals that we were talking about, even though going through vapor distillation, they're not getting cooked down and kind of charred like they might do with steep and boil, they still don't really have another use in the gin production. We can't use it again. We've already extracted the flavor that we want from it. So Dr. Ann Brock, who's our master distiller, one of my favorite people, her and her team have worked together to try and figure out what we could do with those botanicals instead of just having another waste product and throwing it away. So we actually send it off-site to another company that uses anaerobic digestion. What is that? It's a natural process where microorganisms actually break down organic matter. So in our case, it's botanicals, but if you're on the bar, you could be sending off your leftover garnishes or your leftover food scraps. It basically converts it into a biogas. So it's a mixture of methane and carbon dioxide. And then that is able to be used to produce heat and electricity, which is wild because it's something that otherwise we would have just been thrown away, right? So after distillation, our used botanicals are able to generate enough electricity to power 10 homes for an entire year.
Wow. Yeah, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, and like an added bonus to that is the methane that would have just been going into the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas, we're actually capturing that and we're using it instead. Laverstoke Distillery. So we did actually, as part of MIB, you get to go on a trip to London. You get to see the brand home, have an amazing tour. How was your tour, Loni? How was
my gosh, it was so great. And also the lunch.
Swamp is good too. We did sit outside looking at the beautiful greenhouse.
No, but the greenhouse itself, like, just having all those botanicals so that people can touch them and feel them and smell them, and you're not. It's not every day you're going to be able to, touch and smell a grains of paradise plant. So it's pretty beautiful and also cool on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean the building themselves too they're cool. So that was built by the greenhouses were built by Thomas Heatherwick. If anybody is in New York or has been to New York recently, him and his team have helped do the vessel in Hudson Yards as well as Little Island. So they're all over the place. But Laverstoke Distilleries, super cool. We bought it back in 2010, and it used to be an old paper mill. So it has 14 buildings that we did not knock over, we kept, and we actually helped to open things up. We refurbed it for about 2 years. There's a huge visitor center, there's a cafe, a bar. We installed, there's even the little movie theater. It's where all the distillation happens. You can see very faintly, it's not a great picture of it, but in the top right hand where the glass houses are, there is a river there. So that river was actually entirely covered up when it was a paper mill because they started expanding, but we've opened that back up to become really like a feature of the site. So when we were doing this, we also worked with BREEAM, which I had to write this one down because I could not remember it, is the Build Research Establishment's Environmental Assessment Method. A real mouthful. Basically, it's helping, it's the leading system to measure a building's environmental impact. So you have to go through a bunch of different tests, measuring the performance, and it's focusing on everything from management to energy, transport, water, pollution, and innovation. Through the transformation, we were able to be the world's first refurbishment project and the world's first distillery to get an outstanding, which is the highest rating that you can get. So a lot of things going on. There is a case study of it online, which I can drop in the chat too, if anybody wants to have a bit more of an in-depth look. But what is that like? What did we actually do there? A lot. One of the things was installing these huge rainwater capture tanks. So as you're actually walking around the distillery, if anybody also has been to the UK, it rains a fair amount. So even just installing these rainwater capture tanks, we save 1 million liters of water a year. So all that water that gets to be used on site for things like even just flushing the toilets and taps on site, right? Things that you don't necessarily always think of for water usage, but it's saving and it means we're not using more. Our distillery also uses 100% renewable energy. We've achieved the Carbon Trust standard, which really just means that it's our best practice to waste management, and we're reducing our carbon footprint in turn, which is reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. The greenhouses that we were talking about, so they house the botanicals, so you get to see them and touch them. They're not the ones obviously we're using for making the gin because that would be crazy. I don't know how that would work. So they're actually connected to the distillation room. So instead of just getting rid of that heat, we keep that heat from the distillation process and we put it into the greenhouse so it maintains that perfect temperature. So one is a bit warmer, one is a bit cooler, but we're maintaining that perfect temperature. And then we also, things like we've just installed solar panels that help to run all the consumer experiences. Yeah. Do you have any questions about anything so far? I don't know.
It's because you're such a great presenter. You don't have any questions.
Because I'm talking too much.
Their jaw just dropped to the floor. Oh my God, Zoe, tell me more.
Did you say you wanted to hear about botanicals?
Okay. Yes, we do, honey. Tell us all about the botanicals.
You can't make gin without botanicals, obviously. Yes, you need juniper, but then you can kind of pick and choose whatever else you want to be adding in there. So this guy right here is Alessandro Garneri. He is our master of botanicals and actually just came into this title last year. Previously, we had Ivano Tenuti, who Alessandro had been working with for the past 6 or so years. And as far as we're aware, we're the only gin brand that has somebody in this role. And we've done this because we have these and wanted to build initially 20 plus years ago amazing relationships directly with the farmers and suppliers instead of using brokers. So what most kind of big name gin brands will do, or actually most gin brands in general, they'll use brokers in order to source the botanicals, which you can kind of think of it as like the Amazon of botanicals, if you will. So you could order the same thing, and the next time you order it, it could be from a different region within the same country, or it could be a different country altogether. We have a lovely map as to where we source all our botanicals, and these are the botanicals that are going into Bombay Sapphire. All of them have been chosen for the flavor that it's bringing to the gin, and when it's combined, it really creates something that's quite special. Another reason why we have chosen vapor distillation is because we think it's really keeping all of those ingredients that we've taken so long to source in its kind of truest and freshest form. So Alessandro has these relationships with farmers and suppliers in all of these regions. They're essentially set up like co-ops. We don't work, with one farmer. It started out that way maybe many years ago, but we now work with co-ops in all these different countries of around 400 farmers, depending where and when.
Zoe, we actually have a good question for you.
Yeah.
Jason Davis wants to know, can you say the name of the process used to break the botanicals again?
Of course, it's anaerobic digestion.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. Love it. So yeah, all of these botanicals are chosen for the flavor that they're bringing to the gin. The juniper, for example, is sourced in Tuscany in Italy. It's quite kind of like reminiscent of Tuscany, where it's quite a big berry. It's very juicy. It's quite purple and dark in color. Kind of has a really nice life, honestly, quite lazy, chills out. But we and we'll talk a little bit more about the lemon peel as we talk about Premier Cru. But even here, one of the steps that we're taking in terms of sustainability is reducing the packaging and the transport of these botanicals. So these botanicals get shipped to our kind of holding space in Italy, where we have shipped, instead of using a 3-ply box, like cardboard box, we're using 2-ply with a single piece of tape, and then we reuse or recycle those boxes. That doesn't sound like a lot, but with the amount that we're sending things back and forth, anything that we're doing right is hopefully making a difference.
Yeah, it adds up for sure.
Yeah. The biggest thing here, though, is that all of our botanicals are 100% sustainably sourced. And this is a first for any gin. And it's not just us saying it. We worked with a third-party organization to get this certification. And it's actually not even us fully being certified, but it is each of the farmers that we're working with has to individually be certified. So it's taken a long time to get here, but this actually happened last year. It's 22 years ago at the end of 2022. And this means that in order to be certified, all of these farmers have to commit to the continuous improvement across the board. So it's the people that are harvesting and actually doing the work to source the botanicals, responsible purchasing practices, development, and reduction of environmental impact. It's really that 360-degree approach. But we think it's really important to care as much about the supplier and the farmer and the communities that are doing all that harvesting for the botanicals as much as they care about the botanicals that they're growing, right?
Human sustainability for sure.
Yeah. And that's like you gotta, it's a full thing. It's 360 degrees. A A great example is in Ghana in West Africa, where we source our grains of paradise. So for a number of years, we worked with another third party. It was a non-government organization, and we helped the community to actually establish itself as a farming co-op. We helped to install a water pump, which now supplies clean drinking water for the village, and then have recruited an expert to help them basically for advice and guidance on their growing practices. And Ivano had a really nice quote that was, by looking after their well-being and investing in a sustainable farming practices, we're helping to protect the environment and their livelihoods for generations to come, right? So obviously looking at now, but always looking that one step ahead in the future. And that brings us over to Bombay Sapphire Premier Cru, Murcian Lemon. So this isn't in every state. It just launched actually at the beginning of last year. If you see it, I mean, I urge you to try it. How do you?
Delicious.
Yeah.
It's so good. I'm like, so we got it in Georgia, right? But I still have like a little bit. I was like making martinis every week with my
favorite in a martini.
And I was like rationing it, like split base, Premier Cru, regular Bombay, and I was like, it's not here yet. And then when we got it in liquor stores, I was like, yes, okay. Yes. I had to ask Ryan though. I was like, is it in Georgia? I don't know. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, what?
I keep forgetting which states it's in, which states it's not. I know we do have it in New York. It is, I mean, it's definitely my favorite martini gin right now. Yeah, it is focusing though on those relationships we were just talking about with the farmers and suppliers that we work with. So this guy, his name is Jose Francisco, and he was one of the first citrus farmers that we started working with 20 plus years ago. Couple years, 2021, he was retiring, and we were trying to look at a new product to make, and it felt like a really good fit where we were celebrating the work that we had done and some of the amazing citrus that he was able to bring to Bombay. So Premier Cru kind of naturally happened that way. So it is a London dry gin. It's all focused around late harvest Fino lemons. So normally for Bombay Sapphire, we use 2 different types of lemons. But for Premier Cru, we're just focusing on this one. You can see that is a huge lemon.
That's a big, I was thinking that. 2 hands, 2 hands.
I know. So we really wanted to focus and highlight the citrus. So you can see up top, there's the Fino lemons. And then we're rounding it out with mandarins and sweet navel oranges. Now we're saying it's late harvest, so they basically have taken a bit longer to ripen, which means those peels are going to be a lot thicker and you're going to get a lot more of those oils, which is exactly what we want when we're distilling. And we're sourcing from Murcia in Spain, which is in the south of Spain. It's this amazing microclimate for citrus, actually renowned across the world for the quality of citrus that they have. But it's this microclimate that's kind of in between mountains and the sea, and you get a bit of everything. If you were talking about, the terroir with wine, that you could have the same grape. You could have it in 2 completely different regions, and you're going to have a pretty different tasting wine. But nobody really talks that much about it in terms of botanicals. But botanicals are still something that we're growing. Where and how you're growing them is going to affect the taste, right? Why we carefully source and work with the farmers that we work with. So we really wanted to celebrate that instead of trying to hide it. All of these lemons are hand-picked and hand-peeled, which I don't know. My grandma used to do this with like an apple and a paring knife really quick. But the idea of doing this with a lemon and the thick peel is crazy. Yeah. Something that's definitely like passed down generation to generation. But yeah, all these lemons, hand-picked, hand-peeled. We keep the peels, and of course, we're not going to throw those amazing lemons away. We send them to another company that juices them for those kind of like the shelf-stable lemon juice that you would find in the grocery store. So still being used. And then we take all those lemon peels and they get hung over essentially like clothing lines all across this town to dry in the sun. So, not using any energy there, just using the sunshine. Depending on how hot the sun is, that can take anywhere from like 1 to 2 weeks, just enough until the lemon is brittle enough to be snapped. I have not been during this time, and I would love to go because I can only imagine what the smell is like
Right.
overwhelmingly
The
fresh.
whole town, like, what happens if it rains?
You know what? I've never actually been asked that. I feel like at that time of year, it doesn't rain that often.
They probably put a tarp over it.
Yeah, something. But so we do a single harvest of this every year. So just at that time, after the longer season, once we have those already, they're brittle enough to be snapped. They get sent to our distillery. This is Dr. Ann Brock, who we mentioned, who is our master distiller. So she is actually the only one at the distillery who is able to, she personally hand cuts every batch of Premier Cru. If she's not there, Premier Cru is not being made. She does oversee, I think there's 12 distillers right now. So they're able to make Sapphire. She's the only one that's allowed to make Premier Cru. So there's very certain strike points that she has to hand cut. She noses every single one. And it's still a London dry gin. There's nothing else that is added to it, right? That is what a London dry is. You can't add anything after distillation unless it's same grain neutral spirit that you've started with or water for dilution. But it is a lot more citrus forward. I mean, on the nose, it's just like a citrus burst, kind of tying into, we mentioned like wine and the terroir before. At the top of every bottle, you see that there's a little yellow sticker. So on there we have the year, and that's the year of the harvest. So right now they're working on 2023. I've tried 2021 and 2022. There is a noticeable, very small but noticeable difference where 2021 was a bit more orange forward, 2022 is a bit more lemon forward. But we really want to celebrate that instead of trying to hide it. It is small batch. It's honestly, as Loni was saying, it's like my favorite martini gin right now.
So good.
But kind of anything you want that added extra kind of citrus burst and boost to it.
Yeah. Or like a 50-50 martini with this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I wouldn't go dirty. Wouldn't go dirty for that.
maybe if you're that kind of girl.
Cool. I feel like I sped through my slides, but we
did.
can definitely go back and like go a bit more in depth if there's anything that you want to talk a bit more about. Is there, I mean, anything from your side?
No, I think that you were very thorough.
Good. That's good.
I was like very like just hanging on your every word. Even though I probably know like half the stuff already, I was just like, oh man, okay. Relearning it. I love it. I love it.
Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about like most imaginative bartender and maybe what your experience was with it?
Yeah, I think it changed a lot this year though. Like
It's still similar.
yeah, no, I definitely think that most imaginative bartender is probably one of the most like imaginative competitions. You know what I'm saying? Like other competitions, like, oh, how can you make this drink? This competition is really like about the person, about what they're truly passionate about, and I think that just makes it more of like it's like almost like a family affair because everybody brings their passions and everybody's sharing themselves and truly being themselves, and that just makes like for people just to get to know you on like an intimate level. So you make like lifelong friends after that. Even people who are in MIB that are other years and you meet, it's just kind of like everybody is one big family, and I love that about MIB. I just feel like it's such an experience. It's like honestly, if you're doing MIB, you just need to set aside the whole year.
It is a long process. It is, but yeah, no,
yeah, no,
amazing.
it's definitely yeah. Everybody is just so like I was watching this year, and I was watching at the final awards, and then my phone cut off, and I was like, who won? I was like texting Pete, can you tell me who won?
I love that. Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite parts because it's everybody really pouring themselves out there. And it isn't, of course, you have to make a cocktail, but it's so much more about you and what you're passionate about.
Right.
And getting to see everybody's individual stories is one of my favorite things.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like I can't. It's like nothing else. So the league of its own, and it's just like even if you don't win, like the experience itself, like just like when we went to the graffiti museum in Miami for one of the excursions, I feel like my mind was just open to like a whole nother like realm of art and just interpreting. And I just, before that, I never really was a museum person. Mm-hmm. And then after that museum, I was like, oh, museums can be cool.
You've been to some museums since then?
Actually, when I was in MIB, like right after, I stayed a day after, and I went to the Art Deco Museum.
Oh, that's cool.
Then it gives you like a list of like the buildings that are Art Deco in Miami. Nice. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, I think that this is a good segue to get into my section and talk about, how I'm inspired. Like the Graffiti Museum really inspired me to, create some different cocktails, but also I use certain books more than others when I am doing R&D, and have a little presentation for you. So 4 books I use for sustainable cocktails, and I just feel like first you have to like really get inspired on what you're actually wasting. Like you could just look like if you work in a restaurant / bar, you work at a bar, just like at the end of the night, just kind of like look in the trash can, or while they're prepping, just kind of look to see what they're throwing away in the kitchen. And that, the things that are repetitively thrown away, like you can catalog those in your mind and kind of like think, I can do something with this because we go through so much of it. Also, I really love to follow low waste bars and influencers. Like there's so many out there, but I just really like half my feed on Instagram is like half my feed on Instagram is environmental, like people who are doing low waste recipes. And I think that really inspires me a lot too, because every day I'm seeing people using waste or people gardening and they're using it this way or they're using something different. And it just gives you different perspectives on how to use waste. And as always, you can just do your best and have fun. There's no wrong or right way to, incorporate sustainability into your program. I think that you should, definitely get started somewhere. I think you should get started somewhere and just go for it, And then actually somebody reached out to me on Instagram the other day and was like, hey, we have this thing and I was thinking about doing this. What do you think? And I was like, oh, we can collaborate. Let's do it.
Love that.
It's so much fun just to talk to, other people about. And speaking of other people, I actually talk to her all the time. Coop, like, I always like, I'm looking at her like fermentation stories because I'm too scary to do fermentation, but I love watching it. Which she pops those bottles on her Instagram. I'm like, yeah. Anyway, all right. So the first one I really love is the Flavor Bible. I think everybody should have a Flavor Bible. And if you've never seen the inside of a Flavor Bible, it literally just like lists all the ingredients in alphabetical order that you would find in the kitchen, and then it lists flavor pairings underneath it in alphabetical order. And I think it's really just interesting to look at the end of it. They say that little things that go together very well, and if some of those things are waste items in your kitchen, you can try to like incorporate that into a cocktail. Also, I've really been into the vegetarian Flavor Bible lately because it has more like fruits and vegetables and things that normally get tossed in the kitchen, like ends of onions and I don't know, like fennel fronds and things like that. My second book, Plant Use Scrappy Cooking. I love this influencer. She's just really energetic, and she has some really great recipes, like just food recipes for your house. But I like to kind of like just watch her and see what flavors and what pieces of the scraps that she's using to know that they're edible or not. Because one day she was using pomegranate skins, and I was just like, can you? Pomegranate skins?
What'd she do with pomegranate skins?
She dehydrated them and made them into a powder. And I never thought to do that with them.
No.
So I was just like, okay. Cool. And she'll be like, don't throw out your pickle brine after you finish your pickles. Put this in it or make a pickle martini. And I was just like, I love her. She's so much fun. You should definitely follow her on Instagram. Get her book. It's full of gems. The third one is The Science of Spice. And this one I kind of use when I'm thinking of a specific like spice, because this book inside of it, it has like maybe like 30, 40 spices, but it has where they're from. Like that map that you have of like Bombay Botanicals, where they're from, it kind of looks like that. And it will show you like where things are from. And let's say you're looking at turmeric, and it will talk about the flavor phenols and like things that go well with it and like how it's grown. And it's just a very interesting book. It divides the spices by regions too. So if you're working at a restaurant that's focusing on Mediterranean food, then you can look up the spices in the Mediterranean and actually play off of those flavors to create. So I really love that one.
Nice.
Cocktail Codex. I mean, sometimes when you're using scraps and waste from your bar, like the best thing is to go like classic cocktail and just kind of like expand from there. I find that if I'm making something like a cordial and I don't know what to use it in, like I'll look and like see like a classic cocktail in this tree and then go down the tree and be like, okay, I want to make this cocktail with this like low waste cordial that I made or whatever, Oleo. So the Cocktail Codex is a simple way to highlight those wasted ingredients as well. So like if you are doing something really cool with some low waste item or some item that's kitchen waste normally, and you made this really cool cordial, whatever, you don't want to like put that in a cocktail that's going to cover it up, right? You want to do something that's simple so that then you can talk about it to your customer and get them excited about reducing food waste. And just don't hide those things. Just be like, hey, I made this. We put it in this classic cocktail. It made it great. Anyway, that's just how I like to do it.
I totally agree. I love that. And yeah, if you're also going through the effort, you want people to be able to taste that. I love that.
Yeah, don't be afraid to share your passions. And that's what MIB is all about, sharing your passions. Let's do it on an everyday. Like, hey, man, I made this plantain skin Oleo, and we don't throw away our plantain skins in our kitchen. We make this drink with it, and you're going to love it, and you're going to order 5.
Yes.
All right. So, yeah. Also collaborate. I feel like you could collaborate with other restaurants. Hey, if there's a coffee shop next door, still their grounds, you know. I actually just dropped off some bins to my friend Kiani's bar and was like, hey, will you save your juice lemon and lime skins for me? Because I'm going to be doing some mocktail pop-ups and I just want to make some Aleos. And she was like, sure. You know, I think that just like reaching out to your friends and seeing what they're wasting in their bar, or like you can collaborate and maybe you have something that they need. And don't be afraid to slide into the DMs of people who you watch. Like I watched this Instagram. It's called Low Waste Cooking School. And I literally messaged them and was like, hey, what can I do with this? And they sent me a DM right back and was like, hey, you could do this. You know?
Amazing.
Yeah, so just brainstorming and getting those ideas on paper and actually trying it out. Don't let them stay on paper. Just, you know, do it, produce, like, and then share what you produced. I think that's really, really important. All right, that's the end of my slides. Hey. All right. So I'm sorry. Thank you, Zoe, and thank you, Bombay Gin. And keep an eye out for our Earth Month companion PDF coming out later this month. It's filled with eco-friendly recipes and cocktails. Oh, there's a little. There we go. One of the cocktails is actually a Bombay Premier Cru cocktail. So you can try to recreate that if you like. And you can get your copy by signing up for the newsletter right there, lushLifeProductions.com/newsletter. If you enjoyed this class, please hit the like and follow buttons. And if you want to learn more about Portland Cocktail Week and Sorry, I dropped my phone and it has my script on it. If you want to learn more about the Portland Cocktail Week classes like this one, follow Portland Cocktail Week on Facebook or YouTube. We're also on at Portland Cocktail Week, PDXCW, and Lush Life at Lush Life Productions on Instagram. You can find out what's coming up next there. And you can find Zoe at Zoe VDG.
It's easy. It's my long last name condensed into 3 letters.
Van der Grinten. And I'm at Lonnie's Liquid Laugh. As you can see,
I love best laugh.
I love liquids. And DM both of us and keep the conversation going because we will really love to talk to you. Like, it really makes my day to like see somebody in my DMs and being like, oh, hey, I bought this new straw. What did you think about the straw? And I'd be like, oh, you saw my straw presentation. But also tune in on April 29th for our last Earth Month class with Kapali Rum. And also just thank you for being you. Thank you for trying to be sustainable and all your sustainable efforts that are coming up in the future, because you're going to go sustainability crazy. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next class. Thank you, Zoe.
Amazing. Thank you. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye, guys.
Bye.